Hello again, and we are in Matthew 22, verse 34 today. And we're actually going to look at two passages because these are parallel passages, but both of them provide a little bit different information to give a fuller picture. So we're going to also look at Mark 12, 28 to 34. Hearing that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, the Pharisees got together. Now, remember, yesterday we were talking about with the Sadducees coming to Jesus with their question, and now here we are with the Pharisees getting together to ask some questions. One of them, an expert in the law, tested him with this question: Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus replied, Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is he's quoting from Deuteronomy 6:5 here. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it: love your neighbor as yourself. That's Leviticus 19:18. All the law and the prophets they depend, everything holds on to these two commandments. Now, let's look at Mark 12:28 to 34 says this. One of the teachers of the law came and heard them debating. Noticing that Jesus had given them a good answer, he asked, Of all the commandments, which is the most important? The most important one, answered Jesus, is this: Hear, O Israel, the Lord the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. Now, this one adds strength. The second is this: love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. Well said, teacher, the man replied. You are right in saying that God is one and there is no other but him. To love him with all your heart, with all your understanding, and with all your strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself is more important than all burnt offerings and sacrifices. Even Jesus said this. Obedience is greater than sacrifice in the Old Testament. It said that. When Jesus saw that he had answered wisely, he said to him, You are not far from the kingdom of God. And from then on, no one dared ask him any more questions. Okay, so one account in Matthew is saying that the Pharisees got together. One of them, an expert in the law, tested him with this question. And we see, of course, in Mark is also one person as well. But the motive is different here. The other ones, the first time the Pharisees are asking questions, the Sadducees are asking questions, there's a different type of testing. They are trying to trap him. That's the type of test that's going on here. But this time, this is not the same motive behind it. This testing him is, I'm wanting to understand. I'm trying to get understanding here. And I'm wanting to test the character. Yes, as we talked about before, there's sometimes the good testing where we're asking questions. God invites us to ask questions. He's not afraid of our questions. There are times when we doubt or we struggle with things, and we need to ask questions. That's what bolsters our faith. That's where we've talked about faith is the revelation and the persuasion to do God's will. Well, sometimes it's our questions that help us to have that revelation and then the persuasion to do God's will. So God is not afraid of our questions. He invites them. It's the motive of our heart in which we ask the questions. And here is this young man who is asking with the right motives. He's wanting to gain understanding. And so we have he's sincere, he has the right questions, and that's why Jesus can say, You're not far from the kingdom of God. So let's look at just a few things. One, this is not just the emotion. To love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. It's not just an emotional response, it's the entire person, the entire being. So the heart is the affective center. It's the desire producer. That is more of the seat of the emotions. So this is where all of the feelings come from. This is our heart. So we love him with all of our feeling, with all of our heart, with all of everything bottled up within us. That is the desires of our heart. Okay. Then we have the soul, because he's saying, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. Well, the soul is the breath, the spirit. This is the distinct identity of who we are. The soul is the direct aftermath of God breathing into man to bring him to life. It's also what we see in Ezekiel when the dry bones stand up and they rise up. And God breathes from the north, the south, east, and the west, and he breathes life into these bones. That's that breath. That's the soul. Soul is coming into that being, into that creation. So it's the gift of life in a person, and that's what makes them ensouled. It's the God's breath within us. And he puts his breath in us when we're babies, when we're conceived. Um, then we have, let's see, um, the mind. That's our deep thought, our imagination, our understanding. That's everything where we process information. So all of this, and then Mark says strength, is all of our energies, everything that's within us that we can do, that we put all of our work and our effort, our energies into. So that is the entire person. We love the Lord with all of this, with all of our with all of our heart, with all of our soul, with all of our mind, with all of our strength. And we love him in that way. And when you can do that, then everything else in the 10 commandments and all the laws that follow, when we love him with all of our being, then we don't go against his laws. It's just a natural flow of responding to him in that obedience. And then it says the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. When you love God with everything you are, and you understand who you are, your identity through him, which we've talked about before, when you understand your identity through God's perspective, and you love what God has created in who you are, then you also love your neighbor in the same way. So everything falls on those two things. That in the breakdown, we've talked about this too, is of the 10 commandments, the first 4 have to do with our relationship with God and how we respond to God in our relationship and love for God. And when we obey those, then we are fulfilling that first. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And then the second part is the second part of the 10 Commandments. This next 6 has to do with our relationship with others. So when you are in the right alignment with loving God, then out of that flows your love for people. And so it's easy to not steal, kill, or destroy your neighbors as Satan wants to do, because that's his goal. And God's goal is love and mercy and just and grace and all these. He does have justice, but all of that, when we understand how to love God with everything we are, with all of our being, we love what God has created because he's made us in his own image, then we love others. Then every bit of the 10 commandments and the rest of the commandments given throughout scriptures, everything just falls naturally into place because we obey those just naturally. And that's why he's saying everything depends on these two things. Love the Lord your God, love your neighbor as yourself. So we'll wrap it up here and finish off the last part tomorrow. So jump in tomorrow with me.